As Barou and Alfred shared their kiss, they would enjoy each other and be with each other for a few days. As Barou was starting to learn how to love, it's been so long since he opened up. It was so long since he felt anything. This felt so nice. However, someone was watching, but it wasn't a person, it was a bird. As the crow from earlier watched this with disgust as it flew towards the Pope and told him everything. As the Pope would glimmer, "My right-hand man has become an F-slur. It seems that we should get rid of him." As the Pope then stood up, he was going to deal with Barou. Barou was his top commander and his second in command. However, he could not let this slide. He committed a sin, and he will be punished. As then we cut back to Barou and Alfred. As they were sitting next to each other eating breakfast, Alfred would say, "I didn't know you could cook." Barou would say to Alfred. Alfred would say, "You don't have any servants around because, well, you don't want to see anyone. You learn." As in, Barou would hold Alfred's hand and say, "I love you, Alfred. I know it's only been a few days, but you made me feel happy when no one else has. You made me feel something in my soul." As Alfred would say, "I feel the same way." But then suddenly the door would bust open as the Pope would walk in. "So, my top commander is an F-slur. Very fascinating." And Barou would say, "Sir, what are you? Don't you dare sir me. Do you have any idea about the crime you committed? Do you have any idea?" As then Barou would say, "Do you have any idea how much of an a-hole you are?" As then, the Pope would be extremely mad. As he would snap his fingers, suddenly Barou and Alfred would fall down tied up. As the Pope would say, "It seems you've forgotten your place." "It's a shame, Barou. You are my most loyal dog. You did everything I asked of you. Even the stuff more brutal. Even the stuff that the most honorable men wouldn't. But now, it's time I get rid of you." As then the Pope would take Barou and Alfred out. As he would fly up, having them float up to a wall. This was no ordinary wall, though. This wall separated humanity from the Badlands. In this world, there are two different races, humans and monsters. And the monsters lived in the Badlands. The Pope says, "Now you'll be eaten by monsters. You'll suffer. That's what you get. And then you'll go straight to hell for your actions." As Barou would look at Alfred and say, "I'm sorry I did this to you. I'm sorry, thanks to me you'll..." Alfred said, "I lived a miserable life, but the days I've been with you are the happiest I ever been. I love you." Barou would say, "You too." As the Pope said, "How can you love someone like that? How can you love someone who's..." Barou would say, "You know, it's funny. I found love only being 36. And you found love never. In your 300 years of ruling humanity, no one has ever loved you." The Pope would say, "I'm not allowed to get married. Did you just make that rule as an excuse because you're a lonely piece of..." Suddenly, the Pope would behead Alfred as he threw his body off the wall. As then he said, "I'm getting tired of that mouth." Barou would say, "I'm gonna die anyway. I might as well make you suffer with me." Pope would say, "You know, since you're going to hell anyway, I might as well show you the flames." As in, the Pope would light Barou on fire with magic. As he felt his face begin to burn, as then he was thrown off the wall. As Barou fell from that wall, he thought he was going to die. Luckily for him, though, he would land on cold, thick mud. Somehow this broke his fall, even from hundreds of feet, causing him to survive. As he stood up, his face was almost entirely burnt off. As he looked down, he saw Alfred's body and his head next to it. As he got on his knees, he began to cry and say, "Goodbye, my love." Barou couldn't mourn long, however, because he heard footsteps. As he turned around him, there were 5 beasts. These strange monsters, these strange beings would look at Barou as a giant lizard man would charge at him and try to claw at him. But Barou would dodge last second and jump onto the monster and grab its head and rip it clean off. As the other people looked, he saw lizard men all around him. As another one charged at him, he would grab its arm and pull it off and use it as a weapon to slay the beast. As the other two were impressed, the lizard would walk up to him and say, "You know how to fight, human. Tell me, you look important. That armor you have on, were you a warrior of sorts? Barou would say, yes, I was. We'll take you to the chief. He might have use for you. Barou would follow along, as he was brought on to a big lizard. This lizard was unlike the rest, as the rest were only around 8 feet tall. This one was 20 feet tall, and his arms were long. His scales were tough, and he had sharp claws, but Barou was not scared, as he stared at him straight in the face. He said, normally I would devour a human like you, but we need help. We're at war.
Barou would then smirk and say, war? War? Well, that's my specialty. Who are you at war with? 7 tribes. You see, ever since the monsters were defeated by humans, we've been separated into tribes, waiting for the man to bring us all together, or the woman to unite monster kind once and for all to get revenge on the humans. These tribes are after us because we own the Kaiser's helmet. Barou would say, the Kaiser? Wasn't that the monster who tried to conquer humanity? Wrong. He tried to unite humans and monsters under one banner, but he was defeated by a priest. Barou would then sigh and say, that priest is the Pope, as he would grinch his fist. As then, the leader looked surprised. You know him? He's still alive. And you don't like him? No. Looks like we have a common enemy then. Whoever gets the full armor will be able to unite monster kind. However, these 7 tribes have beaten us back more and more, and I don't see any way of victory. We may be strong, but they outnumber us, and each one has special abilities. Barou would then smirk and say, I have an idea.
Do you know how to make alcohol, like whiskey of sorts? As then, he would say, of course, we're monsters, not barbarians, but why would you need that? I have a plan. Pretend to surrender. Have all the chieftains meet you here, then throw it on them and light them on fire. And when they're weakened, your men will surround and attack them. We'll dig holes at the bottom of our floor and have our men surround and flank them. Even if we're outnumbered, if we can attack them from below and attack them from the side and hit them everywhere and trap them into a point, we can win. As then the chieftain said, that would work, but it's unhonorable to do so. It's unhonorable. Barou would say, honor doesn't win battles. If you want to win this war, if you want to survive, you have to give up your honor. The chieftain would then think and say, you're lucky we're desperate, but if we fail, it's on you. As then he would walk off. As Barou would stay there for a few days, as it took a week to get everything prepared, the monsters would actually start to like Barou. Barou was disliked by his men through his brutality, but here the monsters admired brutality, and even though they had a sense of honor, Barou made a lot of sense, saying that honor doesn't win battles. And they respected him because he was tough. They saw humans as squishy and weak, but Barou was able to take down 5 lizards at once. Everyone respected Barou. As eventually the tribes would come, as the 7 chieftains all sit down with the main one, all of their armies came there. They had wolves, insects, and other monsters. However, Barou's men hid underground and waited for the time to strike from above. As suddenly, the chieftain lizard would have a drink with all of them to celebrate them having peace. However, then he would pour whiskey on all of them and light them on fire. As a drowns of whiskey came in, buckets were dropped as it fell down the mountain. As then it was lit on fire, lighting up tons of them, lighting them to flames. And as they were lit on fire, Barou's men came from underground and struck them from behind. Even though they were outnumbered 5-1, them being struck from behind and having a massive fire rain on them caused them immense fear as they ran away in terror, as they ran away defeated. As in only a few hours, one of the biggest armies was defeated. As Barou walked up, the lizard looked as the 7 tribes were dead. As he said, thank you. There are remnants. We can assimilate them and start our journey. Barou would say, I want to challenge you for the mask. As then, the chieftain would look at him shocked. You what? The giant lizard looked at him. He said, do you even know my name? Barou would say, you never told me. It's Rex. We were so focused on everything, I've never told you that. You see, Barou, we don't focus on names or much else. What we focus on is battle. Some of us believe in honor, though, but it appears that honor is outdated. You taught me that.
So, because of that, I will reward you by fighting you unhonorably. As then, his tail began to wrap around Borough's leg as he began to throw him around. As Barou landed on the floor, Rex would say, "You know, Barou, to challenge me for the Kaiser's helmet, to try to become chieftain of monsters, you're insane. Sadly, it's not gonna pay off." As he would try to step on him, Barou would roll out the way, as Barou would dodge every attack he threw at him. As he had a plan, Barou learned a technique which was very good against monsters. You see, even though they haven't fought monsters in a long time, the Pope teaches all his soldiers how to deal with them just in case they ever come back. As then Barou would jump as high as he could, landed on the monster's head and crushing its skull. Monsters are extremely powerful, but many of them, especially lizards, have a very soft head, as he just stepped on it over and over and over again, crushing him. As he fell to the floor defeated, all the lizards surrounded Barou and bowed. As Barou would put on the helmet and say, "I am now the new chieftain, Chieftain Barou, leader of the lizard men, and soon to be leader of all monsters."